If I'm being honest, I'm a gambler. Now when I say I'm a gambler, it doesn't mean that, I have trouble pushing buttons on a screen or like I can't stop myself from, spinning the wheel. Like I'm not one of these people that needs to call a hotline like a dumbass. Like, let's talk about that for a second. How do you need to call a hotline for your addiction? How does that make any sense? When I say I'm a gambler, I'm meaning in more of a sense that I just simply cannot live an ordinary life. And perhaps that would be to my detriment. It really confuses me how people can even manage to force themselves to live, down the ordinary path. I don't know if it's the way I'm wired or my life experiences up until this point that kind of caused me to choose this direction. But there's nothing in my life that I would regret more than not making the decision because I was scared or I was not willing to take a risk. Like literally there is no plausible reason I can think of in my head that would make me want to make that decision when you know what the path is going to lead to. And maybe it's just a difference of priorities or what I want out of my life, right, compared to the regular person. But I simply just cannot justify living a life where I know the ceiling is capped. For instance, right, let's just say I was to become a police officer, which I wouldn't, by the way, you know what I'm saying, but let's just say I was. If I go down that route, I know what the trajectory of my life would look like at that point. Right, I'm gonna go work for the government, probably make, anywhere from $60,000 to $110,000 a year, and most likely live in a shit lifestyle because I don't enjoy my life, because I'm constantly thinking of what else I could be doing. On top of that, you factor in the schedule that they, the life they live, which is probably one where it's split shifts and, half the time they're working in the morning and half the time they're working at night. And like I said, maybe this will be to my downfall, but I just simply refuse to live a life that is so monotonous and boring and dull, right, so repetitive, where I know what to expect, where like I struggle to be bossed around. And maybe that's an ego thing, maybe it's just the way I'm wired. I just can't wrap my hand around the fact that someone is going to tell me what to do with my life, where I is in full and utter control of what I do, my actions. But not only are they in control of my actions, they're in control of my inactions. There's just no life that I would even live or want to live where I feel like another man is in power of me. And like I said, maybe that's ego, maybe that's pride, but I just can't comprehend how someone, that's just been working the same job as me, literally the same exact job, but just because they've been there longer, they're somehow in a position of power to control me. Perhaps I was born in the wrong time period. And that's not me saying that I'm unwilling to learn from someone who has more experience than me, right, because I am. But there's just something about being forced to do something that I don't really want to do. Actually, it's not so much the case that just because I don't want to do it, or that I'm incapable of doing anything repetitive, because I am. But it's more so me realizing and constantly thinking about the time that I could have been using to pursue something that I actually know has a higher potential. I wish just for a second you could step into my mind. The constant thoughts I face when doing said task. There's just something about the what if that fascinates me. What could be. There's no life where I can live with myself as a man, where I don't take a risk. At first there was a point where I was thinking to myself, am I crazy? Like, am I actually mentally insane? Because I would look around and see all the people living their lives as if they enjoyed it, or as if they were okay with it. A life that I can never live. And you might be thinking to yourself, the reason why I'm saying this is because I think that it's difficult, to live that life and work that job, right? Or that job is difficult. But that's where you're wrong. The problem is not that the job is difficult or hard. The job is so easy that it's boring, that it eats my soul to the point where I'd rather. And this is not me saying I have any, thoughts of doing that to myself, right? Because I don't. Okay, let's get that straight. But perhaps it's just my ADHD or the fact that I'm a genius. But I just live for the thrill. I love the pressure. I just have these constant thoughts of me wanting to do something to keep my mind entertained for a brief moment of time. I actually have had thoughts before of, just quitting everything and, I don't know, go become a professional boxer or some shit. It's not because of anything I've seen on the internet or anybody, right? Because this is a part of me. And there's just something about that constant pressure or not knowing if you're going to get hit or not that puts me in a state of present. It's one of the only things I've ever found that's actually fully capable of distracting me. I'm just not easily entertained. But I can actually understand as to why, people decide to live out of their cars. They're traveling from place to place, every day waking up in a new area. I even understand people that, decide to go climb mountains or some shit, despite risking death. And you might think to yourself, it's the materialism that you want. But it's not. Although I do want those things, I admit, or I'm not going to sit here and lie. What it is that ticks me is the fact that I'm currently incapable. It just doesn't make any sense to me how someone, literally another person just like me, is capable of having something I want. But I'm not. Being incapable kills me, because I understand that I'm not in the end.